Cowboy Jobu here with the Jobu Report. Have you noticed how the Dallas Cowboys are always the topic of discussion on First Take? I, in fact, call it First Take Dallas Cowboys Report because they're always talking about the Dallas Cowboys. I mean, you think that Stephen A. Smith would be talking about Trent Williams being suspended for 4 games for weed? Or maybe Josh Huff being released by the Philadelphia Eagles for possession of weed, a pistol, and speeding. But no, guess what they're talking about today? T.O. talking about Dak Prescott. Say what? You mean there's no better story than that? Well, as always, guys, I want to thank you for subscribing to the Jobu Report. And if you haven't yet, click on the picture of me and Sean Lee. And by the way, Sean Lee is balling out. And let's go to the tape.
It's my team. It's my quarterback. And if you guys do that, man, it's unfair.
Dak is his quarterback.
Inside, I'm crying tears. He is my quarterback. But again, that's definitely some dialogue that Tony has to have with management. He and Jerry Jones and Stephen Jones, I think, who's the general manager. So I don't really know who's calling the shots over there.
Right.
But I think it's a no-brainer to leave Dak Prescott where he is. I mean, you have momentum going.
Right.
I think that would be probably like the biggest mistake to make, obviously to insert Tony, although he's done a lot of great things. Tony's my guy. But again, I think he realizes too, I think he's a smart guy. He understands what's going on.
T.O. from Muscle Beach, now is Venice. But of course, he's a former Cowboy, telling TMZ he's on Team Dak over Team Romo. Stephen A., should we care what Terrell says?
Yes, you should. You should care for a bevy of reasons. Number one, he's one of the elite wide receivers in the history of the NFL who should be in the Hall of Fame. There's no question about that. When you look at it, 153 touchdowns in his career, 15,934 yards. Come on now, there's nothing to talk about here. The only reason I can understand him missing out on the Hall of Fame in his first go-round because they had to put Marvin Harrison in there, who did deserve it. But make no mistake about it, T.O. should be in the Hall of Fame, and eventually he will be. That's point number one. You listen to him because he has those kind of credentials. He also played in Dallas. The 3 years he played in Dallas, believe it or not, they were relatively respectable. They didn't win a playoff game. They were 0-2, but they went to the playoffs 2 of the 3 seasons that he was there, number one. And number two, they were 31-17 while he was there. So let's keep that. And this is at a time, Max, when Jerry Jones really was running the show before Stephen Jones really had his cachet elevated. Number three, let's take this into consideration as well. T.O. might have an inkling of what's going on with Dak Prescott. The fact that we see a guy who's a 4th-round pick as a rookie playing lights out the way that he has played, with Jerry Jones flagrantly hesitant to just give the man the job since he's won 6 straight, and on top of it all, the entire offense is flowing with him, and continuity, cohesion, chemistry, all of those things do play pivotal roles. It's a no-brainer that Tony Romo shouldn't even be a part of this equation, but Jerry Jones is hesitant to do that because of Tony Romo. Who would be more qualified to speak about that than Terrell Owens? Remember, Max, when he got let go in 2009, yes, he cried about that's my quarterback, that's my teammate, etc., etc. But it was believed that there was some friction between him with Romo and Jason Witten, not only because they're best friends and they're roommates when they travel on the road together, but because T.O. felt like they would collaborate with one another to sort of keep him out of things and not get him the ball more. And him and Jason Witten, according to reports, even almost came to blows one time. Now, Jason Witten is class, and I'm not trying to point the finger at him because I like Jason Witten a lot, but I'm just talking about what was reported. Then we also have to take into account that T.O. didn't have the greatest relationship with then offensive coordinator Jason Garrett because of some of his play calling and how they felt he catered to the whole Romo-Witten connection. So when we think about Dak Prescott and what he is in the throes of potentially experiencing, the difference between him and T.O. is that he's a quarterback, not a wide receiver. He's not the prima donna that T.O. was perceived to be, of course, or actually was. And then you've got a situation where Dak Prescott looks at Tony Romo with all the affection, respect, and deference in the world. So that helps the situation. But it does not mean that the Romo-Jerry Jones dynamic isn't still in existence, and that may be why T.O. is most qualified than anybody to speak on an issue like this.
The question is, should people care what T.O. has to say about this subject? The answer is yes. As you mentioned, he's one of the greatest receivers of all time. He should absolutely be in the Hall of Fame. And he played for the Cowboys, and he played with Tony Romo. That's my quarterback. And TMZ's even, if I recall the headline correctly, Dak's my quarterback, right? Now, if you listen to him talk, if you just read it in print, what he said, you might think, well, given his history, for the reasons you just outlined, Stephen A., maybe he has an axe to grind, and maybe that's why he's being negative toward Romo. But if you watch it and you see what he's saying, he's giving Romo his props. He's just saying, look, he's seeing what we all see. Look, they're 6-1. You want to mess around? And Dak is excellent. He just had this amazing comeback against the Eagles after he went to Lambeau and beat the Packers at Lambeau. It's not like, and Aaron Rodgers played. It's not like they had a backup quarterback playing, So he's right about all those things. And furthermore, the question as to whether we should care about T.O., the indication in the first place is that TMZ is asking him these questions. T.O.'s not like running around looking for a camera. Let me find a camera so I can tell everyone what I think about Tony Romo and Dak Prescott. You know what it's like, TMZ in L.A. You get off the plane at the airport, they get you. If they see you or me, let alone T.O., they're going to put a microphone there and ask you some questions. They do a great job. If you're walking down the block and they see T.O., they're going to ask him about this issue for those reasons. Who's better qualified to talk about it? And then we get this kind of harmless video and we talk about it on TV because it's T.O. talking about, that's, the teary-eyed T.O. after a playoff loss. That's my quarterback. That's my teammate. That guy is saying, not even downing T.O., Romo, not even saying, well, he chased me out of town or anything like that. Just saying, yeah, that's my guy, but look what's going on. So I find no fault in T.O. or anyone who's interested in what he has to say in this matter. Yes, what he has to say is significant, and what he's saying is self-evidently true.
Well, again, what he's saying is significant because he has history that can directly identify with what Dak Prescott is potentially going through behind the scenes, but he's smart enough not to speak on, and the Dallas Cowboys are probably hoping we'll forget. T.O.'s very voice to this matter reminds us of what T.O. endured, because let's be clear, regardless of what you want to say about T.O., he got screwed over by the Dallas Cowboys. He should not have been let go by the Dallas Cowboys at that particular moment in time. They won when he was there in terms of regular season games. They lost when he wasn't. You remember those consecutive three back-to-back 8-8 seasons, along with a 6-10 season in between. That was in the aftermath of T.O.'s departure. So we have to remember that. We have to recall that and pay attention to it. In the end, again, he's reminding us, potentially, whether directly or indirectly, whether intentionally or not, what Dak Prescott is potentially going through. No one is more qualified to do that when it comes to the Dallas Cowboys than Terrell Owens.
And I want to bring up one other thing. Just whenever T.O.'s name comes up, I feel that I need to say this. He was so unfairly criticized, sometimes fairly criticized, but I remember before the Super Bowl, and when he played with Philadelphia with Donovan McNabb, our friend who's here on Mondays, and he was called selfish because he wanted to play on one leg. I couldn't believe what I was seeing when guys like Brett Favre would go out there and lauded almost universally by the media for being sacrificial at his age and everything. And in the Super Bowl, a one-legged receiver is called selfish. And the reason I bring that up is because he was the best player on the field that day, either team on one leg. I know it's not exactly germane to what we're talking about, but I feel like T.O.'s reputation has been so sullied at times unfairly that needs to be mentioned. I feel like that needs to be mentioned.
I can appreciate that mention. Here's where I will take it, and no one ever says this. Look, man, working conditions are not always ideal. Everybody doesn't do the right thing, and everybody doesn't act the way that they're supposed to act all the time. All of us are guilty of that in our careers. My point is, what the hell is your job? In other words, if T.O. ultimately is responsible for running routes, catching footballs, catching touchdowns, the fact that he didn't get along with players, well, damn, figure it out in the interest of winning. That's one of the issues that's why I'm so disgusted, for example, with the San Francisco 49ers, with the whole Trent Baalke, Jim Harbaugh deal. Look at what has happened to that franchise. You literally can say, because Trent Baalke and Ned York didn't get along well enough with Jim Harbaugh, they were willing to eviscerate the franchise just because they couldn't work with this guy.
I just want to make
ridiculous.
one more comment about that. That's the reason I bring up the Super Bowl, and you just highlighted it even more, is because there's a sense, oh, don't worry about T.O. He wasn't a winning player. He was bad in the locker room, team chemistry. He's not the guy you want on your team. But you know how those things are decided? With the chips on the line. And when the chips were on the line, he played hurt and better than everyone else. He wasn't the problem.
Nobody can deny that T.O. can ball, and so can Dak. He's already set the Cowboys' rookie record for pass yards. And coming up next, speaking of record setters, King James.